allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome to the September meeting of the Public Marsh Foundation Board of Directors. Paul, can you please call the roll, serve by the quorum?
Yes, we have Karen Gilborn, Jim Carter, Steve Burke, Daniel Monks, Margie Cassia, and Pat Kepke present for the meeting, so we have a quorum. And notice of the meeting was posted in accordance with Florida statute.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the prior meeting's minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. So moving to the end of the summer here at Pelican Marsh, and we, as you all can see, the construction project is moving along nicely. We've had some good news recently regarding the supply chain. We are hopeful that we are going to be on schedule here to get our food service facility built out. A comment about that. We have some trusses arriving in the near future, and these trusses are going to be stored in the parking lot. They are arriving ahead of schedule, quite surprisingly. We were expecting them in November. They could be here as early as tomorrow. This is really good news for us because it's going to save us a month. But the trusses themselves are large items and need to be put somewhere while the construction crew prepares for their to use them. So we're going to have a challenge in terms of some parking at that end of the parking lot toward the community center, and there will be some cones up and signs. Paul is going to send an email out to the community advising them of this, so everyone just needs to take a little more care, go a little bit more slowly in the parking lot, and for a few weeks while these things are in our way. As far as our update with our vendor, we do have an understanding with a new vendor. We'll be talking about that today. Sadly, Artichoke and Company did not pan out for us as their expectations financially and otherwise were unreasonable, we felt. And we went back to Frisco's, talked with them again, and their new position was even worse than Artichoke's. We're in a bit of a spot here because of the labor market. It's very tight here in Southwest Florida, and the supply chain, as you know, is in bad shape. So costs for food items and for the disposables and things that restaurants use are getting more and more expensive as time goes by. And so the financial exposure on this project is different than it was 6 months ago. And we've had to renegotiate, to start negotiations with other entities. And happily speak, we've developed a relationship with Crave Culinaire. Now, Crave, who was originally our very first choice, told us early on in the process, this is much earlier in the year, that they would be unable to partner with us on this project because they were too busy. They were completely at capacity. Since then, they've expanded their management team and decided to expand the business to their restaurant management side locally. And we were able to come together and forge a pretty good deal. We are pretty happy. So at this stage of the game, while negotiations are ongoing, Crave looks like it's going to be our group, and the board will be making a motion to approve them as our selected vendor today. So let's move along to the treasurer's report. Daniel.
Hello, everybody. Daniel Monks, the new treasurer. This will be my first time reading the treasurer's report. Paul will probably put these on the screen as we speak. For the people who have been part of this for years or been part of community budgets, bear with us. I would like to go over some of this stuff in a little bit more elementary way for anybody who might be starting off watching what we're doing. What we're going to do is, I first want to highlight that our revenues and expenses for this year, this calendar year, are over budget. And the best, easiest way to understand why they're over budget is because sales of homes and condos are higher than we would have predicted, way higher than we would have predicted. This may affect us in the future, but for this year, it's really nice. We've already had 152 go through the sales. We budgeted 100 sales. We assumed there'd be 100 sales. We get funding for 2 of our accounts from these home sales fees. And we already have 152 sold. There's another dozen, I believe, still pending. And it would not surprise me if we actually, maybe hit 200 by the end of the year, double what we budgeted. Sales are really strong, but there's nothing in inventory right now. So when we put something up to sell, sells quickly. This has been good for us, and this is a good year for this to happen because we needed the money. We're spending money, so it's nice to have extra money. This is extra money. We're in good condition. We have 3 funds that we look at with the foundation. We have 3 different groups of money, and the operating fund is the fund that we use to pay our Comcast bills and then pay for these amenities, the daily and weekly and expenses that we have. So our goal, and that's where your HOA fee, your HOA master fee, not the one for your community, but your master fee goes to. Our goal is for it to not lose or make much money, to stay about the same at the end of every year, so that your HOA fee will pay for those expenses of running our Pelican Marsh Foundation. Then we have another fund you'll see on the screen right beside it called the Capital Fund, and that fund we use, generally speaking, to make improvements such as the restaurant you'll see being built outside. And then you see the third fund beside it, the replacement fund, and that's the reserve fund where things like the roof and the paint and the sidewalk and the parking lot are eventually going to wear out and need to be replaced. And so you're saving money for those things. And it has a big, long spreadsheet, and each item from the tennis courts to the parking lot has a lifespan that is estimated and a budget for that. And so on those second and third funds, they generally get their money from the resale fees. We're going to spend a lot of money out of that capital fund, the one in the middle this year, for this restaurant. The replacement fund is usually very predictable because we see things, life is going to end of that item before it ends. So at the operating fund, you'll see that at the bottom, our ending cash at the end of last month, 1.473 million. It's a lot of that goes to Comcast. In fact, it's pretty much half. And the other half we spend on the foundation expenses, the day-to-day expenses. The capital fund, at the bottom of it, you'll see $834,365. And that is where we're spending a lot of that for this restaurant. We have already spent quite a bit of it. 173,000 we've spent already on this food and beverage project, and we of course voted and agreed to spend a lot more than that. But you can see that we have 834,000 already there. We're in good place. Good place there. Our replacement fund is 650,000, and it's right on target where we expect it to be. And you can see the totals there. The next page, page 3, the 8 months total resale fees collected. The people who buy a house pay a resale fee. If they've already lived in Pelican Marsh at the time that they bought that house, we refund the fee back to them. So you'll see the less refunds, 26. So 26 people bought another house in Pelican Marsh, so that gives us a net of 152 fees actually collected. Our total net resale fees, $679,000. We budgeted about 300,000. We're way over budget. I hope this continues for a long time. We're in good shape. I hope I hope nothing changes. I hope every month I say the same thing. That's all I have.
Thank you, Nathaniel. have any questions on the treasurer's report? Paul, how about the foundation manager's report?
Okay, it seems summer has flown by with all the it's happening around the community center, especially as Steve mentioned earlier about the construction of our new facility for the food and beverage. And as Steve said, construction is ramping up now to where sections of the parking lot will be closed, and we are sending email out specifying the spaces that will be temporarily closed on the delivery day, Friday, and then another section that will be closed approximately 3 weeks to store the trusses before they can be placed on the construction site. We want to thank everyone who sent in their suggestions for naming our new food and beverage facility. We had over 250 suggestions sent in. A committee has been going through those names to come up with a top 5. Therefore, those top 5 names will be sent out to the membership. Plan is for next week via SurveyMonkey to vote on, and the name that receives the most votes will be announced as the winner and the name of the new food and beverage facility once it's opened up. Replacement of the tennis court lighting and pickleball court lighting is underway. We thank everyone for their cooperation while the course has been closed for this install process. Our hope is to have all the lights installed and completed by mid to end of next week. At last week's monthly CDD meeting, they reported that the last phase of the median landscaping project, which was between Goodlip Frank Road and 41, has now been completed. They have also selected a builder to replace the entry gate houses, and the contract's been signed, and their plan is to have the designs and renderings of these new gatehouses available for their next meeting in October. And we're working with them to also have them provide copies for us so we can provide those renderings and post them in the community center lobby so members can view the renderings. Again, as you always see each month, we encourage all members to provide the foundation with their emails and their contact information so we can keep them up to date and informed with all that's happening around Pelican Marsh. We also encourage members to register for the Pelican Marsh website so they can also access meeting minutes, forms, and other important information and documents about the foundation. And if you need help in registering, please contact Linda or Monique in the admin office, and they'll provide assistance to you how to get registered and connected. Lastly, I want to remind everyone that our annual welcome back party to kick off the upcoming new season is scheduled for Sunday, October 24th. Flyers have been posted and emailed out to members about the event. And we suggest that you reserve your spot soon for this great event coming up as soon as possible because space is filling quickly and we want to accommodate everyone as possible. And lastly, to remind our staff is always here to help and serve in any way we can. We're always open for members' suggestions and comments as we always strive to make Pelican Marsh the best place it can be. And that's my report. Are there any questions?
I have one question, Paul. By October 24, will the trust be in a position to be put on the building? Or are we going to still have a lot of parking places tied up with those, thus interfering with welcome back party, which may cause, quote, a parking problem?
The plan is to start installation of the trusses October 12th. I was told by the construction crew. So barring any delays on weather, hopefully the trusses will be moved and out of the way prior to that event happening.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Well, I have a question. Paul, do you happen to know the current percentage of residents for whom you have an email address? Because I know that's been an issue in the past, and I'm assuming that as new people are coming in, they always get their email address.
Yes, last count, taking, at least we have one address for a household. We have about probably 78% of the households covered.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. On to new business. Item 9.1, ratify the approval and change of recommended operator for food and beverage operation. So we have, we've given you some background on this. I am now going to call for a motion. We will, the motion will be made, seconded, and then there will be some discussion by the board and by the audience if you choose, and then we will vote on this motion.
I move to put it on the table for discussion.
Let me call the motion. Can I get a motion to approve Crave Management Group as the operator of the Foundation's food service facility and authorize the president to negotiate and execute an agreement with Crave in consultation with the Foundation's counsel, and further to ratify the short-term consulting agreement between the Foundation and Crave for food management services dated September 23rd, 2021.
I so call for that motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Oh, we voted. Sorry.
Anybody have anything to say about this? Oops.
How about on Zoom? Anybody have questions?
No questions so far.
Okay, excellent. So that motion is carried. 9.2, approval of application for memorial plaque. We had a request for a memorial plaque placed on a bench in the Court Sports area from Jim Tyndall in honor of his wife, Mary Ann Tyndall. He sent a really moving request to the foundation regarding this, with supporting 26 Pelican Marsh residents in support. And the executive committee has recommended that we go ahead and approve this request. So I'd like to move that we honor the request by Jim Tyndall to remember his wife, Mary Ann, via a memorial plaque. Have a motion?
Yes. I would move that we approve the application for the memorial plaque for Mary Ann Tyndall.
Thank you. Second? All in favor? Opposed? And the motion carries. Item 9.3, discussion of the proposed increase in the resale fee. So when we say resale fee, what we're really talking about here is the resale capital assessment allocation. Our auditors who audit our books annually recommended that we change the allocation of this fee, and the board has discussed this and has already passed a bylaw change that achieves that. Now, the board will discuss raising the resale capital assessment. There are a number of reasons why this is recommended. The Finance Committee recommended this. Our last treasurer, Jerry Carbone, and our current treasurer, Nathaniel Monks, have been working on this for some months. And the feeling is that there are a number of market forces at work here, not the least of which is the fact that, as you heard from our treasurer earlier, while we have a robust resale capital assessment revenue flow this year, there is no inventory in Pelican Marsh. There are no homes to buy. We don't really know what's going to happen in 2022, watching interest rates and the government's handling of the economy. We don't have a lot of confidence that next year will be as robust as this year. So we've seen a steady increase in the resales here at Pelican Marsh. But as I said, there's really no inventory. So we don't know what's going to happen. And we have to sort of plan for a weakening of this market. Therefore, the Finance Committee and the Executive Committee recommended that we raise this fee from $4,500 to $6,000. And the plan is for us to announce this to the community today, to vote on this at the October meeting, to implement it November 1st, should it pass. Now, just a few personal comments on this. I've had a number of questions about this from folks, and I just want to reiterate that the current residents of Pelican Marsh, everyone who lives here, has invested in community infrastructure by virtue of the fact that they pay their fees here every year. People coming into our community who are buying homes here have not made those investments. We are in the process of building pretty much $1 million restaurant here, another part of our community infrastructure. And these investments continue to grow in value. Potential replacement costs also continue to grow. So as a one-time fee paid by future real estate owners here at Pelican Marsh in order to help support our capital and replacement funds. The Finance Committee strongly recommends that we move in this direction, as do the auditors, as does the Executive Committee. So this is merely a time for discussion for the board community. Like I said, we will not be voting on this measure until the October board meeting. So I open the floor for discussion by the board.
I do have a question. What are the fees in general in Naples and communities that are similar to ours?
Well, the most similar community to ours has traditionally been Pelican Bay. Their fee resale capital assessment is $7,500. So we've been sort of in the middle, and we believe that given the market, the state of the market now, this is a prudent move.
Can I add something to the answer there? We have noticed, Paul called around to the other communities to ask them what were the resale fees and what were their HOA fees that pay each year. And we have noticed that any communities that had a lower resale fee tended to have a higher or maybe much higher HOA fee. And so the resale fee looks like a good way to keep from hiking the HOA fee, which always tends to be what the residents don't want their HOA fee hiked. So we have a very low HOA fee and a very low resale fee, and our HOA fees are way lower than almost all competitive marketplaces. I would like, since I'm already talking, I'll go ahead and add a couple more points. As the treasurer and or that the vice president, I've been working with the Finance Committee on this issue for a while. And the Finance Committee, we have a very strong Finance Committee. Very impressed with these guys. They're 4 very strong individuals. And they, the Finance Committee really wants us to proceed with raising the resale fee. Several of the reasons that they gave made a lot of sense to me. One of them was that home values are going up, but our resale fee has stayed the same, which means that technically it's becoming a smaller percentage of the resale fee of a resale fee, a resale price of a house. And so our costs are not staying the same. Our costs are going up. It's harder and harder to hire people. It costs more to do everything we want to do. And as you know, you've probably heard the word inflation this year. Those things are happening, but our income does not go up on a normal year unless we raise the resale fee. But normally you're not going to have a situation where everybody's rushing for Pelican Marsh to buy in. So I definitely want to agree with what Steve said, that we can easily predict that there will be less sales in the future. We don't know what day that starts, but it has to start pretty soon, because before COVID, there was many houses and condos on the market in Pelican Marsh, and now there is essentially 1 or 2 on a generally speaking. So it would be good to be prepared, because as I was mentioning in my treasurer's report, that money goes into our reserve fund for things like the roof and the paint and the parking lot, as well as into the capital fund to finish paying for things that we want to add, such as improvements to our community.
Thank you. Do we have any other board comments regarding this issue?
I have one question. Did the Finance Committee consider the total picture for Pelican Marsh, meaning that many individual communities also charge a resale fee? Did they put that into their mix of discussion? Because I'll say my own community has a $1,500 resale fee. That in itself is not a big number. You put $6,000 on top of it, now it's $7,500. Is that a big number looking at the price of the homes in the community? Probably not. But if that wasn't in the mix, I do have some concerns about making a jump from 4,500 to 6,000.
Okay, well, the answer to your question is the Finance Committee did consider that question. And they believe that this increase is warranted, regardless of what each community chooses to charge their residents for their own capital needs. Pelican Marsh the foundation has its own capital needs. And it would be imprudent to not plan ahead for a weakening real estate market. And so there are a number of other reasons which I've enumerated today why this makes sense to them. But yes, they did consider that, and indeed looked at all the neighborhoods and looked at their individual fees just to kind of get a feel for what the total picture looks like in terms of a home sale, price of a home sale. Nonetheless, it's a separate entity. It needs to be considered as a separate entity.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Any other questions, comments from the audience?
I would just like to.
Yep, Richard.
My name is Rich Benson. I live in Portofino. I would like to be supportive. I think it's a good concept. And I know when I elected and voted for Nathaniel, he's a fact-based guy. And, I have no doubt there's a lot of facts that your committee has put together on this. I just think that you really need to perhaps present that. I'm the kind of guy that when I open my wallet, I like to know why I'm opening it and why it makes sense. But based on the few facts that have been presented, I think are key ones that competition charges a lot. But I like to go back to the basics. I think the real fee is to continue operation of our community center and amenities which you added. So I do think that with inflation and all the other economic forces, it does make sense. I think we used to be at 4,000 at one point, and I think you recently moved it to 4,500. I don't know how long ago that was, but it wasn't that long ago. So maybe, we should have made it more at that point in time. So maybe when you're going to make it 6,000, we should think about whether it should be more or less or whatever, so that we don't have these frequent movements all the time. And I know it's hard to predict the future. Who would have predicted that a year ago we'd be where we are now? So I do think it's a great plan. I just think that a little more selling, a little more fact providing, a little more data would make it really clear that this is a good thing. So I just would encourage you to present it that way rather than just ask us to realize it's a good thing.
Excellent point. Thank you.
Thank you.
No questions.
No questions?
Oh, wait, Mr.
Jerry Carbone. I'm actually the godfather of raising that price all the time. I think it's much needed when you take the value of the community, and that's how we adjusted it accordingly. And I see you raised it 500 more than what I asked for initially, which is fine. I think it's worth that and then some. The origination of how that fee was to be distributed started when we got the approval to build this building. At that point in time, the total fee that was collected was to pay off the debt. Okay, after the debt was paid off, then there would be a distribution by percentages to operating, reserves, and capital. And from what I understand now, you're going to eliminate operating and utilize only the dues to pay for operating. And I find that still difficult because the resale fee, capital fee, okay, gets distributed to all points through the community for all to appreciate on. All right, what you're doing now is you're throwing it into just two categories. And I'll give you an example. You're going to negotiate a contract with this new vendor. And part of that contract is we have to underwrite X dollars. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Hopefully that's not changing. Okay? If he doesn't meet the mark and we have to pay him X dollars next year, at the end of the year, because he hasn't achieved his level, where are you going to take that money from? You can't take it out of reserves. It's not a reserve item. You can't take it out of capital because it's not a capital item. It's an operating item. So where are you going to get that kind of money when you're not going to do anything except when you prepare this year's budget strictly on operating expenses.
Is that a rhetorical question? You want an answer?
Well, I want you to answer it,
Oh, I want to answer it.
Okay.
okay?
This is a very good question. Thank you for asking it. And since Mr. Benson has reminded us to stay on the facts, this is something the Finance Committee and the Executive Committee talked about. And we have in our operating fund, which you'll remember is the first of those funds that I talked about, which is the one that just pays for our expenses each year, each month that we expect to have happen. That operating fund has extra money in it to cover unknown expenses from the first year possibilities of costs with the restaurant, the underwriting that you mentioned. So if the restaurant has some expenses due to slow sales because of COVID or high labor costs because of COVID or whatever, startup costs, we actually have the money, extra money budgeted, and it's already in the operating fund waiting to be used. We do have extra money in the operating fund above and beyond the expected expenses of this new year.
You talked about the 2022 budget.
We have our rollover.
It was no
Well,
money.
what's the figure for that?
It's called the fund balance.
The fund balance is the name of it. And I want to say it's 248 without looking, but it's more than $200,000 that we have set aside for expenses that we can't predict, that we don't know for sure are going to happen, but they're there in case we need it. So it's a good question, and I believe that we have that covered.
Okay, you still got to get a vote on to make the change.
What?
You're still going to get a vote to make the change in those bylaws.
Bylaws have already been changed.
We did do that.
But you got to vote on it. You
We did
can't,
vote on it.
who voted on it?
The board voted on it.
Yeah, but that was voted on by the membership. That was included in the vote. Proceed with the loan. It was all encumbered.
I believe we ran this past our attorney, and he said it was a board vote decision, and we